What the hell is that? Did this fighter fake an injury? And is this fight seriously going to be what's next for Eubank Jr.? We get into it all in this video. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. Guys, we're fresh off the weekend, Beterbiev Bivol. It was an absolutely fantastic fight and an even crazier event to support the main fight on the card. And I just thought, you know what, I've not seen a card with this much strange stuff happening in quite a long time. So we absolutely have to get into it. And I thought this was a really enjoyable card. Well, I have to be honest with you guys. As you know, I was supposed to be doing a live stream, got too drunk the night before, couldn't get up for it. So we did a little post-fight stream instead. And I've gone and watched everything back. Lastly, of course, I saw everything flying around on social media, so much speculation, so much controversy, and so much to talk about the different things that happened on this card. Before I get into this video, guys, if you're interested in joining my Discord community, there's a link in the description. It's something that I'm very, very proud of already. Some great people in there. And the aim with that is really just to build a place where people that love boxing can come, chat, discuss different ideas, try and predict fights, and just, it's kind of a hardcore boxing space. I'm loving it. So yeah, please do get involved if that sounds like it's something that you would enjoy. Also, please like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. And make sure you get in the comments section below, what was the maddest thing that you saw on this card? Because it was a very, very crazy card. We're going to start with Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn getting in the ring after his fight against Szeremeta. Now, this was a very strange fight for me because I felt that Szeremeta was such a knockover opponent. From what I understood before the fight, he was very much getting off the couch. He wasn't somebody that was really serious about continuing his career at the highest level until he got the call to face Eubank Jr. As I understand it, he was essentially semi-retired. So everyone was expecting Eubank to deal with him well, and he did, to be fair. You know, he got the 7th round stoppage. I think Eubank started the fight super fast. And I think at this point, you know, Eubank looks like Eubank, but has he slowed down a bit? I think he probably has. And I also worry about certain vulnerabilities he maybe has developed over the years. I mean, he was always known for having an incredible chin. And he took a clean 1-2. I remember him taking off Szeremeta at one point in the fight. And I just worry that maybe he's a bit more vulnerable than he used to be, Eubank Jr. And it does add to the intrigue around that Conor Benn matchup with the size discrepancy, with the difference in weight between the two men. You know, the conversation with that one has always very much been, why is this being made? It's surely just for money, surely just because they've got the two legendary names of their fathers and it's a rivalry that we'd love to see again in British boxing. But in reality, the size difference should be too much, but it all depends for me on what Eubank Jr. has left. A fit, fully at it Eubank Jr. should deal with Conor Benn in a fairly straightforward fashion, in my opinion. But as I say, Conor Benn did get in the ring after the fight, and the circumstances around this one happening are just, I've got a lot of questions about it. Firstly, can Conor Benn fight in the UK? Because I thought the whole point of this fight was it was a massive clash for the UK. The tickets that'll do at the gate would be a huge number. And there's a lot of intrigue around it in the casual, you know, the more casual fan base. It would cross over and be more of a mainstream fight for British fight fans. If it's going to be something they do in Saudi, if Conor Benn isn't allowed to fight in the UK yet, doesn't that kind of avoid the point of it? Does it still generate the revenue that's worth it? I don't know. It's a weird one. Plus, who has Conor Benn fought recently? It's starting to become a very weird career for Benn. He seems like he's becoming a bit of a... There's more wrestling character than there is actual in-the-ring substance at the minute. Sort of very, very funny comment from Hatman saying he looked like Draco Malfoy with the hair. I saw someone on Ade's channel comment and say he looks like he's auditioning for Grease, or he missed the auditions for Grease. That aside, it is a bit bizarre, and I don't know how much I care about that fight anymore. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Of course I'm going to cover it. Of course I'm going to watch it. But if you're asking me in an ideal world what happens next, I'd much rather see Eubank Jr. try and get a world title against Janibek. I think that would be such a good fight. I'd make Janibek the favourite. I think he looks like an absolute killer. And we've not really seen him in with like a really high level competition, and that middleweight division is looking rather thin. But Eubank's made his intentions extremely clear, and it's one of my favourite sayings. If you're not sure what someone is trying to do, look at their actions. Actions speak louder than words. It's a classic saying. And if actions are a language, what are they telling us? Eubank Jr. is calling out Conor Benn, Conor McGregor, all the Conors, and you know, he's just looking for big paydays. Canelo is the only serious name he's called out, but again, massive payday. And I think that Canelo versus Eubank Jr. would be a horrible, horrible mismatch for Eubank Jr. And if you're Eubank Jr., what I think you probably do is, he probably wants a couple paydays now. He's looking at what he can do. So for him, you take that Conor Benn fight, you should be able to win it. And once you get that win, you then try and get Canelo, and then you can probably retire off the money from those two fights. So yeah, it's a very interesting time in Eubank Jr.'s career. And, this fight was there to get him back into the ring, to get him tuned for whatever's next. And it looks like it's going to be that Conor Benn fight. So I guess we'll see what happens. But it definitely created more of a circus around the event. It definitely added to the drama of the card. And Eubank Jr. Conor Benn, I'll obviously watch it, whether or not I think it's a great fight. Up next, we've got Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron. And this was very, very strange as well. I mean, I've never seen something that looked quite damaging, but actually there's no sign of any damage. So let me reframe that. So what's happened here is Whittaker and Cameron are going at it, and everybody's been saying for a while, Whittaker is able to do this flashy stuff when he's in there with subpar opposition, with guys who are journeymen who are applying their trade. But when you're actually in there with a proper opponent, can you do all this flashy stuff? The answer is no. And I think we all thought as he went up to world level, it would go, but maybe not at this level. And Liam Cameron's a good fighter, but is he world level? Probably not. It was kind of like a B-Tech Beterbiev Bivol in a way. The way Cameron fights, it does remind me a little bit of Artur Beterbiev on a very basic level. Whereas Whittaker, definitely not a Bivol in style, but definitely more back foot boxer. And it looked to me that he just wasn't really dealing that well with the power and the aggression and strength that Cameron was bringing. And Cameron was landing some big, hurtful shots. And I think Liam Cameron's going to feel absolutely gutted here, because I think that fight was only going one way at that moment. I think Whittaker was going to get more and more tired, and Cameron was going to keep landing significant blows. Now, the bit where we're trying to figure out what's happened and what the intention was, and what's being accused of Whittaker here, is that basically he's taken the opportunity with this spill out of the ring to try and say, I have an injury, I can't continue. And therefore the fight was a draw. It was a technical decision split. It was a split draw. So looking at the fight state at the time, you could see why he'd want to get out. Now, the first question is, did he manufacture the fall out of the ring in the first place? I've watched it back in slow motion, and it's completely inconclusive. I just can't tell. He's being forced back. He sort of tips his eyes back as if he's expecting something, but that could also be because Cameron's sticking his head in. What I think is more up for debate, and something we can read into more, is whether there was a real injury or not, because when he crosses over the ropes, apparently it was his right leg that he claimed to have injured. And when you actually watch the footage back, I really can't see any evidence that he hurt his right leg in that fall. It's something that we're probably never going to know the answer to, for sure. I mean, there's so many instances of fighters pulling themselves out of fights. We never actually quite find out what happened, or it was speculated there was a broken orbital bone or whatever it was. This was much more unclear, and I'm really not sure what happened. If I had to guess, I'd say that maybe Whittaker did experience some pain in his right leg. Maybe he was already feeling pain in his right leg. Maybe there was a problem from training camp that he didn't tell us about. And I do think that he found a way out there, because I've seen guys knocked out the ring way harder than that and get back in and continue to fight. So, yeah, it's definitely a strange one. I don't want to say Whittaker's not injured in case that he is, but it looked very, very iffy. I will say that, especially with the way that the fight was going. If Whittaker had been up on points and cruising it, do you really think he wouldn't have got back in the ring and fought? I don't know. It's a difficult one. The third thing I want to talk about is the unbelievable first-round knockout from Fabio Wardley on Frazer Clark, and what seemingly happened to Frazer Clark's face. I mean, he was on a knee. His face looked completely lopsided. He looked like he was completely out of it. And there was a huge dent in the side of his face. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen someone with a dent in their face. I mean, I think there was another fight. It's escaping my mind right now. Oh, maybe Wilder against Fury. People were saying that there was a bit of a dent in his face after the fight. But unbelievable punch from Wardley to do the damage there. And it actually reminded me a bit of Wilder, speaking of Wilder. The way, it was quite wild the way he threw that right hand. But this is the thing, guys. And before the fight, I actually predicted Clark to win this one on points. I thought he'd go in there. I thought he would be a lot more conservative this time and just use his amateur schooling to try and negotiate the rounds and win it on points. But something that you can't really account for in heavyweights in particular, because the power is so high, is just sort of untamed, raw athleticism, power, and aggression. And Wilder's career is a great example of it, because technically awful, but he had the ability to land that right hand. And even in a fight that's a mismatch, you'll see the lesser fighter land a few shots. And if you only need a couple, it doesn't really matter if you're that much worse. So I think Fabio Wardley, that's probably doing him a bit of a disservice, because I think he is a very, very good developing fighter. I think he is going to be probably a top 10 heavyweight in the next few years. He's still got time. He's still got lots of development to do. The problem for him is, how do you match him? There's some people saying chuck him in there right now with like a top 10 guy. Like someone mentioned Jared Anderson. I think that's a very, very risky fight for Fabio Wardley to take, because Anderson's looking for a comeback fight. He's going to be more motivated, I would think, if he's trying to continue his career. And I think that Anderson's a very good boxer when he's switched on. So I think Anderson has a much higher ceiling than Wardley, in my opinion. That's not to say Wardley can't do really good things in boxing. And I love the fact he doesn't have that apprehension, that he does put all that power into his shots. And I think he can just improve his skills exponentially. I really do. I think he's going to get better and better. Before we continue to talk about who I'd have Wardley in there with next, I just hope Frazer Clark's okay. I've seen some updates saying he had a very simple surgery on what is turned out it's a broken jaw that he has. I think he had a double break in his face. This boxing game, man, it's no joke, is it? I mean, that is absolutely awful, terrifying injury. And I've spoken to Frazer Clark before myself. I interviewed Jack Bateson a few years ago, and I spoke to Frazer on the phone about Jack to learn a bit more about him. My friend Alex Maver, who has a channel here on YouTube, Fight Energy Films is what his channel is called. If you want to check that out, that's an MMA channel now. But Frazer, by all accounts, is an extremely nice man, and you just hope that he makes a full recovery. But you do sort of ask the question, does he continue after this? And actually, a video I'm thinking about making is I want to look at the guys that were on Team GB over the last few years in the heavyweights, because this is the third and final Team GB guy who's been stopped recently. We had Joyce get absolutely iced by Zhang, and then he obviously had the fight that he lost against Chisora, and then we had Joshua get completely iced against Dubois, and now we've had Frazer Clark. And, those three guys, I do sort of wonder the amount of sparring and wars they have on GB. Those are the three main guys that were in that team for years, and I just wonder if it's taken its toll on their punch resistance. I just wonder if they're all actually older than what their professional careers say that they are because of those years of amateur sparring. And David Allen was talking about the other day, how hard that Team GB sparring is, and I just wonder, if that is the reason that these guys have been beaten up and stopped recently. I don't know. It's maybe something worth talking about, and I'll probably make another video about that. But anyway, long story short, horrific injury. Congratulations to Fabio Wardley, and I really, really hope Frazer Clark makes a full recovery. And it's the sort of injury where he might be considering retirement afterwards, because he's lost at British level, and I just wonder if he sort of thinks this boxing game ain't worth it. But we'll find out. And hopefully, as I say, he makes a full recovery. In terms of Fabio Wardley and what I think he should do next, it's a very difficult one. I mean, someone was talking about Solomon Dakers the other day. I think I've not watched too much of Dakers, but he looks like quite a fiddly technical boxer. Someone talks about Atama, but he is also with Ben Davison as far as I'm aware, so that fight won't happen. The winner of Fisher against Dave Allen could be an interesting shout for Fabio Wardley, but, is he going to really improve from a fight like that? I don't think so. It's a difficult one. I'm trying to think. Maybe a Chisora fight could be good. I mean, if Chisora's looking for another one, I think he could teach Fabio Wardley a thing or two in that ring. I do think Fabio Wardley would win that by stoppage, because I think he's just too fresh. But I think Wardley-Chisora could actually be a really good fight to make, and no one's really mentioned that. So, yeah, he's off the Joe Joyce win, Chisora, so what else can you say? Wardley-Joyce could be another interesting fight to make. I would, weirdly, even though Joyce lost to Chisora, I'd fancy him against Wardley, weirdly. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe if I really think about that, I'll change my mind quite quickly. That was just my instant reaction, but, I think I'm not thinking about the most recent iteration of Joyce. But guys, let me know, who do you think Fabio Wardley should fight next? What did you think about that injury? And what do you think about Whittaker? Do you think that he actually was injured, or did he just kind of find a little escape route out the ring? And will you watch that Eubank Jr. Ben fight? Just before we go, I have to talk quickly about Opataya Massey, and just final thoughts on Beterbiev Bivol. You've been loving the 6 Things We Learned video, and I've had loads of feedback and reaction to that, so thank you very much if you're someone who tuned into that video. Opataya, I think he is super legit, and I thought that was a really, really good performance. The dude is so big, so athletic. I know this was the first fight for a while. He's had his dad back in the corner, and that seems to have made a big difference. I thought it was a great performance by Opataya, and you just really want to see him get active now and go from strength to strength. I really want to see him take over at cruiserweight and then potentially move up to heavyweight at some point. There's some chat about Beterbiev going to cruiser and fighting Opataya. That would be very interesting. Not sure how that would play out. I would fancy Opataya just because he's such a huge athlete. But something not so controversial was Massey's corner throwing in the towel. Joe Gallagher there throwing in the towel. Let the man live to fight another day. He was getting beaten up and he was going to lose that fight. So I've had no problem with that. I know it was his world title shot. But at the end of the day, you've got to protect these guys as well. And they know their fighter better than anyone. And he would have seen he was done. So that was not a dramatic call in my opinion. Final words on Beterbiev and Bivol. I've seen so much debate, so much back and forth. Was this a robbery? Wasn't this a robbery? Did Beterbiev win? Did Bivol win? Was it a draw? Well, all three of those results would have been absolutely fine by me. Even that 116-112 scorecard, I just don't have a massive problem with because I think there were so many close swing rounds that if you ended up swinging all of those to Beterbiev, you can end up with a gap like that. I scored at 115-113 Beterbiev, as you will all know by now. That's only one round different. And there were rounds that I was very close to giving to Beterbiev, and there was rounds that I was very close to giving to Bivol. So Very difficult fight to score, not cut and dry. Absolutely deserves a rematch. I'd love to see a rematch. And, you know, Beterbiev's only getting older, so I would fancy that, you know, Bivol would think I can probably get him now. At the same time, Beterbiev coming off that knee injury, if he doesn't get injured again, he's only going to be further away from that knee injury and therefore fitter and in better shape. So it's a very interesting rematch. This will have created even more hype and interest for the rematch. And I think that it's a no-brainer to do it again. So I think they will, and I think they should. And for me, nothing controversial about that outcome. Some of you might think that it was controversial, and that's completely fine if that's how you want to live your life. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As I say, get on the Discord server if you're interested. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get your comments in the comment section below. And as I always say, on to the next one.